the emperor's court fell silent. The young architect had done the impossible. He captured the attention of the most powerful man in the Persian Empire. No blueprints, no models, no gold, only words. How do you command the focus of someone who holds the fate of 23 nations? In this story, you'll discover the ancient Persian strategy that built empires and still dominates every stage where success depends on commanding attention. This is the story of how one man changed history by mastering the ultimate power, focus itself. In the golden corridors of ancient Persepolis, where marble reflected the dreams of emperors and every stone whispered tales of ambition, there lived a truth more valuable than all the treasures of the Orient. In a world where 1,000 voices cry out for recognition, the one who commands attention commands destiny itself. For when kings and merchants, scholars and warriors all compete for the same precious resource, the architect of attention becomes the architect of power. The year was 518 BC, and the Persian Empire stretched from the Aegean Sea to the Indus River, a realm so vast that the sun never set upon its borders. Within the magnificent palace complex of Persepolis, where Darius the Great held court over 23 nations, a young architect named Cyrus Artaxerxes faced the challenge that would define not only his career, but the very foundations upon which great civilizations are built. At 28, Cyrus possessed the technical skills that marked him as one of the finest architectural minds of his generation. He understood the mathematics of load-bearing structures, the engineering principles needed to move massive stones across impossible distances, and the artistic vision required to create buildings that would stand as monuments to Persian greatness for centuries to come. But in the competitive world of the imperial court, there were the dozens of talented architects vied for the attention of the most powerful ruler in the known world. Technical competence alone was not enough. The opportunity that would change everything came in the form of a royal proclamation. Darius, seeking to cement his legacy and demonstrate Persian superiority to the world, had announced a competition to design the most magnificent monument ever conceived by human imagination. The winning architect would receive unlimited resources, eternal fame, and most importantly, the personal patronage of the King of Kings himself. The losing architects would return to obscurity, their dreams buried beneath the weight of their failure to capture royal attention. Standing before the great window of his workshop, overlooking the sprawling construction sites where thousands of craftsmen labored to build the glory of Persia, Cyrus understood that this was more than an architectural competition. It was a contest of visibility, a battle for the most precious resource in any civilization, the focused attention of those with the power to transform vision into reality. In our modern world of information overload and shortened attention spans, this ancient wisdom has never been more relevant. We live in an age where millions of messages compete for our focus every day, where the average person is exposed to more information in a week than our ancestors encountered in a lifetime, and where the ability to capture and hold attention has become the most valuable skill in almost every field of human endeavor. The most successful entrepreneurs, artists, leaders, and communicators of our time are those who have learned to apply the same principles that guided Cyrus over 2 millennia ago. They understand that in a noisy world, success belongs not to those who shout the loudest, but to those who create experiences that make people want to listen. This doesn't mean being flashy or manipulative, but rather understanding that human attention is a precious resource that must be treated with respect and rewarded with genuine value. The best attention-getting strategies are those that benefit the audience as much as they benefit the person seeking attention. They create win-win scenarios where capturing focus leads to providing real value, solving real problems, or creating real beauty. Whether you're an entrepreneur trying to launch a startup, an artist seeking to share your creative vision, a professional looking to advance your career, or simply someone who wants to be heard in an increasingly crowded world, the principles of attention architecture remain as powerful today as they were in ancient Persepolis. The lesson is not to become obsessed with attention-seeking for its own sake, but to recognize that in a world where everyone is competing for the same finite resource of human focus, those who understand how to earn attention ethically and sustainably will have the power to transform not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone they are able to reach. For in the end, attention is not about ego or vanity. It is about influence, and influence is about the ability to make a positive difference in the world. The architect who commands attention commands the power to shape spaces that will inspire future generations. The entrepreneur who earns attention gains the ability to solve problems and create value at scale. The leader who captures attention can guide entire communities towards shared goals and common prosperity. In the marble halls of ancient Persepolis, Cyrus learned that the greatest monuments are not those that demand to be noticed, but those that make everyone who encounters them feel worthy of notice themselves. And in that insight lies the eternal secret of all lasting success. True greatness is not about drawing attention to yourself, but about using the attention you earn to lift others up and leave the world more beautiful, more functional, and more inspiring than you found it. The commission was awarded to Cyrus that very afternoon. But more importantly, he had solved a problem that extended far beyond architecture. He had demonstrated a systematic approach to capturing and holding attention that could be applied to any field where human focus and engagement were essential for success. Over the following months, as construction began what would later be recognized as one of the architectural marvels of the ancient world, Cyrus found himself consulted not just on matters of building and engineering, but on questions of communication, leadership, and what we might now call public relations. Nobles sought his advice on how to present proposals to the emperor more effectively. Military commanders asked for his insights on how to inspire troops and intimidate enemies. Merchants wanted to understand how his principles of attention architecture could be applied to their own businesses. What Cyrus had discovered was that the same psychological principles that made monuments memorable and impactful could be used to make any message, any presentation, any human interaction more engaging and persuasive. He had identified the fundamental mechanics of human attention and developed methods for working with those mechanics rather than against them. The construction of his monument took 7 years, but its impact was immediate and lasting. Foreign ambassadors who visited Persepolis would return to their home countries with detailed descriptions of the experience, generating interest and curiosity that extended Persian cultural influence far beyond the empire's military borders. Persian subjects who made pilgrimages to see the monument would leave feeling more connected to their imperial identity and more proud of their cultural heritage. But perhaps most importantly, the monument served as a training ground for future generations of Persian architects, artists, and designers who studied Cyrus's methods and learned to apply attention architecture principles to their own work. The techniques he developed influenced not just building design, but ceremony planning, artistic creation, and even military strategy. Years later, when Alexander the Great conquered the Persian Empire and stood before Cyrus's monument, he reportedly spent hours studying its design and trying to understand how it achieved its powerful psychological effects. According to historical accounts, Alexander was so impressed by the structure's ability to command attention and inspire awe that he ordered his own architects to analyze its construction methods and incorporate similar principles into Hellenistic building projects. The monument's influence extended far beyond its physical destruction. The principles of attention architecture that Cyrus had developed were studied and adapted by Roman architects, who incorporated them into the design of the Colosseum and the Forum. Byzantine builders used similar techniques in the construction of Hagia Sophia. Islamic architects applied attention architecture concepts to the creation of magnificent mosques and palaces throughout the medieval period. But the most significant legacy of Cyrus's work was not architectural, it was psychological. He had identified and systematized approaches to human attention that would later be rediscovered by modern marketers, advertisers, and communication specialists. His understanding of how to create experiences that people wanted to share with others anticipated the fundamental principles of what we now call viral marketing by over 2,000 years. When elderly court officials would ask Cyrus about the secret of his success, he would tell them about the importance of understanding that attention was not something that could be taken by force, but something that had to be earned through the creation of genuine value for those whose focus you sought to capture. Attention, he would say, is like water. You cannot grab it with your fists, but you can create channels that guide it where you want it to go. The art lies not in demanding that people notice you, but in creating experiences that make them want to notice you, want to remember you, and want to tell others about what they have discovered. Then Cyrus stepped forward, and everything changed. Instead of beginning with technical specifications or artistic descriptions, he started with a question that immediately captured everyone's attention. Your Majesty, what makes a monument truly immortal? Before anyone could answer, he continued, it is not size, for the pyramids of Egypt are vast but tell us nothing of the pharaohs who built them. It is not beauty, for countless magnificent structures have crumbled into forgotten ruins. The monuments that achieve true immortality are those that transform everyone who encounters them, creating experiences so powerful that people cannot help but share them with others. The throne room, which had been politely attentive during the previous presentations, became absolutely silent. Cyrus had not just captured the emperor's attention, he had created a moment of collective focus that made everyone present feel that they were about to witness something unprecedented. Rather than showing models or drawings, Cyrus began to lead the entire court through an imaginary journey through his proposed monument. But this was not simply a verbal description. It was a carefully orchestrated experience that used the psychology of storytelling to make every person in the room feel as though they were actually moving through the spaces he described. He started by having the audience imagine approaching the monument from a distance, describing how the structure would first appear as a mysterious form on the horizon, growing larger and more intriguing as travelers drew nearer. He guided them through the experience of entering the first chamber, using his voice and physical movements to create a sense of the space expanding around them. The quality of light changing, the acoustics shifting in ways that would make their own voices sound different and more important. As he continued the imaginary journey, moving the court through progressively more impressive spaces, something remarkable happened. The audience members began to lean forward, their eyes following his gestures, their breathing synchronizing with his rhythm of speech. He had created what modern psychologists would recognize as a collective flow state, a shared experience of focused attention that made the passage of time seem to slow down and made everything else in the world fade into irrelevance. But the true masterstroke came when Cyrus reached the climax of his imaginary tour, the monument's central chamber, which he described as a space that would be different for every visitor depending on their personal needs and aspirations. He explained that the chamber would use architectural elements to create a personalized experience of transcendence, making each person who entered feel as though they were encountering something that spoke directly to their individual greatness and potential. As he described this chamber, he made eye contact with Darius and spoke directly to the emperor. Your Majesty would enter this space and find it, designed to reflect not just your power as a ruler, but your wisdom as a leader, who understands that true greatness lies in creating experiences that inspire others to achieve their own highest potential. The effect was immediate and profound. For the first time during any of the presentations, Darius leaned forward in his throne, his eyes bright with interest and engagement. But more importantly, every other person in the room felt as though Cyrus had been speaking directly to them as well, describing a monument that would somehow recognize and celebrate their individual contribution to Persian greatness. This was attention architecture in its purest form, the creation of an experience that made everyone who encountered it feel more important, more valued, more connected to something larger than themselves. And Cyrus had demonstrated its power not through models or drawings, but by creating that exact experience in real time for the most powerful audience in the Persian Empire. When he finished his presentation, the throne room remained silent for what felt like an eternity. Then Darius stood, something that had not happened during any of the other presentations, and walked down from his throne to stand directly in front of Cyrus. "Master Architect," the emperor said, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed chamber, "you have not just described a monument to Persian greatness. You have made every person in this room feel the greatness within themselves. That is a power more valuable than all the gold in my treasury." Armed with this understanding, Cyrus began developing a design that would revolutionize not just Persian architecture, but the very concept of monumental construction. His monument would not simply be a building that commanded attention through size or decoration, but a sophisticated machine for generating and focusing human awareness, a structure that would actively engage the psychological mechanisms that determined what people noticed, remembered, and valued. The centerpiece of his design was a concept he called the ascending experience, a carefully orchestrated journey through the monument that would take visitors through a series of increasingly impressive spaces, each designed to build anticipation for what lay ahead, while creating memorable moments that would encourage them to share their experience with others. Rather than revealing the monument's grandest features immediately, the design would create a narrative of discovery that made the act of exploration feel like a personally rewarding adventure. The entrance would appear deceptively modest, drawing visitors into a sequence of chambers that would gradually expand in scale and magnificence. Each transition would be marked by carefully calculated surprises, unexpected vistas, dramatic changes in lighting, acoustic effects that would make voices carry in unusual ways, and spatial arrangements that would create memorable moments centuries before photography was invented. But the true genius of Cyrus's design lay not in any single dramatic element, but in his understanding of how to sustain attention over extended periods. Most monuments impressed visitors initially, but quickly became familiar and therefore invisible. Cyrus's design incorporated what he called layered revelation, multiple levels of detail and meaning that would reward repeated visits and continued study. The monument would literally reveal new aspects of itself depending on the time of day, the season of the year, and the perspective from which it was viewed. More importantly, the design was specifically crafted to generate what modern marketers would recognize as word of mouth, elements that would compel visitors to describe their experience to others, creating a cascade of attention that would extend far beyond the physical boundaries of the monument itself. However, Cyrus understood that even the most brilliant architectural concept would remain theoretical unless he could first capture the attention necessary to present it effectively. This meant that his approach to the competition itself would need to demonstrate the same principles of attention architecture that his design embodied. While his competitors focused on creating detailed models and technical drawings, Cyrus invested his time in developing what he privately called his presentation experience. Rather than simply describing his design, he would create a demonstration that would make Darius and the royal court feel the psychological impact of attention architecture firsthand. The presentation took place in the great throne room of Persepolis, before an audience that included not only the emperor, but also the most influential nobles, military commanders, and court officials in the empire. Each architect was given 1 hour to present their proposal, with the understanding that the emperor's decision would be influenced not just by the technical merits of each design, but by the architect's ability to communicate their vision effectively. Artaxerxes went first, presenting a thoroughly competent proposal supported by detailed models and impressive cost calculations. His presentation was professional and comprehensive, covering every aspect of his design with the methodical thoroughness that had made his family famous. The audience listened respectfully, asked appropriate questions, and offered polite appreciation for his technical expertise. Megabyzus followed with a presentation that reflected his military background. Precise, logical, and focused on the practical advantages of his fortress palace design. He demonstrated how his monument would serve defensive purposes while providing impressive ceremonial spaces, supporting his arguments with engineering calculations and strategic analysis. His presentation was informative and well-organized, earning respectful nods from the military officers in attendance. Cyrus delivered what many in the audience considered the most polished presentation of the afternoon. His design was elegant and sophisticated, and his explanation was smooth and persuasive, highlighting how his monument would enhance Persia's reputation for cultural refinement. His presentation was entertaining and memorable, drawing appreciative murmurs from the courtiers who valued aesthetic sophistication. They understood that attention was not something that could be demanded or earned through merit alone. It had to be artfully captured through methods that appealed to the emperor's deeper psychological needs and desires. The successful petitioners didn't simply present facts or make logical arguments. They created experiences that made the emperor want to pay attention, that made focusing on their words feel rewarding rather than burdensome. This observation led Cyrus to a radical realization. His architectural design, no matter how brilliant, would be irrelevant if he could not first solve the problem of capturing and maintaining royal attention long enough to properly present his vision. In a court where the emperor was constantly bombarded with requests, proposals, and entertainment, the ability to cut through the noise and create moments of genuine focus had become more valuable than gold. But understanding the importance of attention was only the beginning. The real challenge lay in developing methods for commanding it without appearing to manipulate or deceive the very person whose support he needed. Darius was not a fool, and like all successful rulers, he had developed sophisticated defenses against obvious attempts at manipulation. Any strategy that felt calculated or artificial would backfire spectacularly, destroying not just Cyrus's chances in the competition, but his entire career. The solution, when it finally emerged, came from an unexpected source: the study of how the greatest Persian monuments of the past had achieved their lasting impact. Cyrus spent weeks analyzing the palaces of Cyrus the Great, the audience halls of Cambyses, and the ceremonial complexes that had been built by previous generations of Persian architects. What he discovered was that the most memorable and influential structures were not necessarily the largest or most expensive, but those that had solved the fundamental problem of human attention in architectural terms. These successful monuments had created what Cyrus began to think of as attention architecture. Spaces and structures designed not just to be impressive, but to actively draw and hold human focus through carefully orchestrated psychological experiences. They used scale, light, sound, and spatial relationships to create environments that made people want to look, want to linger, want to remember and share their experiences with others. The challenge was unprecedented in scope and ambition. The monument was to serve not merely as a building, but as a statement to the world about Persian power, Persian culture, and Persian permanence. It would need to inspire awe in Persian subjects, intimidate foreign ambassadors, and stand as an eternal testament to Darius's reign. Most crucially, it would need to capture and hold attention not just for months or years, but for generations. Cyrus's competitors were formidable. Master Artaxerxes, whose family had served the Persian court for 3 generations, brought both technical expertise and political connections that opened doors throughout the imperial bureaucracy. His proposals centered on a traditional approach, a massive palace complex that would demonstrate Persian wealth through sheer scale and luxury, incorporating the finest materials from every corner of the empire. Darius Megabyzus, the empire's most celebrated military engineer, approached the project with the methodical precision that had made him famous for constructing the bridges and siege works that enabled Persian military dominance. His design emphasized functionality and strength, creating a monument that would serve as both a palace and an impregnable fortress, demonstrating that Persian power rested on practical superiority rather than mere decoration. Most intimidating of all was Xerxes Tiribazus, a court favorite whose charm and political acumen had already secured him several prestigious commissions. His proposal was elegant in its simplicity, a refined monument that would showcase the sophisticated artistic sensibilities of Persian culture, proving that the empire represented not just military might, but the pinnacle of civilized achievement. Each of these approaches had merit, and each architect possessed the skills necessary to execute their vision successfully. But as Cyrus studied their preliminary presentations and observed their methods of promoting their ideas within the court, he began to understand something that his competitors seemed to have overlooked. In a competition where multiple candidates possessed similar technical abilities, victory would belong not to whoever had the best design, but to whoever best understood the psychology of attention itself. The insight came to him while observing the daily routines of the imperial court. Each morning, dozens of officials, merchants, ambassadors, and petitioners would gather in the great audience hall, hoping to secure even a few moments of the emperor's time. Those who succeeded in gaining Darius's attention invariably possessed certain characteristics that had nothing to do with the importance of their business or the quality of their proposals.